So this week you guys chose failure. I did actually, in the end, get my shit together and do the right one, but I had to do a little bit last night and today. But it was kind of funny that happened while preparing a conversation about failure. Hiya, John. All right, so the first place to start is I'm almost not nervous to say it, but it's like it kind of anyway. There's no such thing as failure. There, I said it. It's out there now. What do you mean, Andi? Well, okay, so I think that in society we've got this idea of what success or achievement should look like, and therefore what failure looks like. And I believe that we have got that wrong. I don't think there's any real such thing as failure. I try to think about some things that I have done and that haven't worked out. Mr. Sandal, hi. I've tried to think of some things that I've done and that haven't worked out. Yes, there are things that I've attempted that have not worked out. There are things that I've reached for and that I haven't achieved them. But are they failures? I'm not sure that I don't think of them as failures. For example, and I think I've discussed this before, I was a smoker for a very long time, and about 10 years ago I finally stopped. But that was after, and I'm not joking, 20 maybe 30 attempts to stop smoking. And sometimes my attempts would last a day. I remember one time lasting until an afternoon. You know, sometimes it would literally be overnight when I was asleep, and then in the morning I'd be like, I can't do it, and then I would start smoking again. Those were they were failed attempts. But did I fail at giving up smoking? No, I didn't, because in the end it stuck. And it just took several attempts to get there. Maybe we're under the impression that our first attempt should be successful. And there's nowhere, anywhere in any playbook that says that your first attempt should and will be successful. But because we put our heart into it, because we've given it a go, I think sometimes we've convinced ourselves that therefore it should be successful. And actually, those little attempts are your preparation for getting it right, or for getting something right, not necessarily even the thing that you're going for. PC Lock 75 says, I need to stop smoking. I keep trying. So keep trying. Listen, the key to anything is to begin again, to continue to begin again. Never feel like that one attempt that you made was the attempt. You know, there's this great video of this dad training his daughter. I don't know why they're doing it, but she's trying to jump onto a box, and he's created this little montage, and she jumps into the box, she stacks it, she fails and she fails and she fails, but she almost gets it, she gets a foot on it, and then she falls back, and they keep going until you see her jump on the box. Well, that's what your attempts at giving up smoking are going to be. Sometimes you're going to slam into the box. Sometimes you're just going to get a foot on it and then you're going to fall back. Sometimes you're going to get on it and then come off again and try again, and you fail. So let's get rid of this idea that in some way, Tom says, okay, that's perfect. There you go. Tom says, giving up smoking is easy. I've done it hundreds of times, says Mark Twain. So Mark Twain quote. So exactly that, basically, that we begin again, we continue to begin again, and never be fearful of beginning again. That's, you know, that poem If, which is one of my favorites. He's like, there's a line in there that I can't remember exactly the line, but he's basically saying that, you know, if you can just pick yourself up after you've tried, then you'll be a man, my son. Not a man in the sense of that's only a manly thing to do. Obviously women can do that too, but you know what I'm saying. Hey George, welcome back. And Paul says, there's a quote, maybe from Edison, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. Exactly. Yeah, it's talking about inventing the light bulb. PC Lock says, but weed's so nice. Well, you know, that's up to you. Nobody said that you had to quit. It's only you creating that, you know, that parameter for your life. If you don't want to quit, then don't. You know what I mean? So there's no such thing as failure. You can try at something and not succeed, but you're not dead yet. So you still have so many more opportunities to make your attempt to begin again if you so wish. And also saying that, there's no such thing as failure does not mean there's no such thing as mistakes or bad choices. So, we've all had our fair share of, we've all made our fair share of mistakes and bad choices, but, they're not failures in the grand sense of things. On a micro level, yes, they're probably you could label them failures if you want by like society's definition, but they're if you think of your life as being in process, then this idea of failure is like kind of like an irrelevance. It's like, when I was talking to my coach recently, he said, you're a work in progress. And when he said it to me in the context of the conversation we were having, it really made sense. And I want to share that with you guys as well, is that in respect of failing or failure, you're a work in progress. Nothing's failed yet. Unless they're putting you in the ground, you've got time to work on it. Hey, Carly. Hey. So, the thing is about failure as well, the interesting thing is that, something's gone on with my iPad, there we go. Right, the interesting thing as well is that failure is not like a linear graph, you know what I mean? Like a linear graph towards failure. Something can be working and then for some reason, something changes and then it stops working. So failure can come about by failing to adapt. There's been, many times where people have given examples of businesses. I think IBM was one of them where IBM, Amstrad, where they were doing very well. They were a very successful business. And I don't know why I did it like that, because they were a successful business. They were a successful business and then they failed to adapt and therefore they became obsolete and someone else, Microsoft and probably Apple and all those kinds of players came and took their place and Nintendo, I guess, because they were a gaming console. So part of the balance of failure and success, and I don't even want to put them on a spectrum together because I think they're two different domains, but like part of this process in terms of how well you are doing, let's describe it as that, is just being in this constant appraisal and being able to adapt. If something's not working, then that you can take a minute and just go, hang on a minute. What needs to change? Everything was working and now it isn't. Where are we failing? It's not failure, but it's a failing. That's possible as well. There's such a thing as that. Okay, so Mr. Johnny 83 says, it's like the line in Tub Thumping, I get knocked down and I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. Well, exactly. Exactly. Aaron, hi. Hannison, hello. PC Lock 75 says successful people fail more than people who try nothing. Well, yeah, exactly. You guys are just doing this talk for me, right? Because that's a perfect point as well, is that, it is par for the course. If you're going to keep yourself locked up and not do anything and never try, then yeah, good, you can indemnify yourself against failure. But if you're going to put yourself out there, then that is part of the process. It is not a breaking down of the process. It is part of it. I think J.K. Rowling said something about this as well. She's got lots of great quotes because obviously she's been there. She's been on that level of like having nothing, being skint, depressed, not knowing if it's going to work out, feeling like she's failing. And she said something along the lines of, that if you're not going to try because you're scared of failing, then it's equivalent of being dead. And you guys are here because you're all creatives, and creativity, I should imagine, like as it is for myself, gives you life. So you don't want to be dead. You don't want to like stop trying because you're scared of failure, because otherwise that is, creative death. Aaron, you watch Curfew? Damn you, we'll have to talk about that. How come you guys got to see it? Ian, hi. Carl, what's up? Maya Sounds, hello. Carl says, failure is never fatal, success is never permanent. Guys, you don't need me here. You guys don't need me here for this one. You got it all figured out. Exactly. It is this constant, I'm going to come to this anyways, but this constant navigation of like adjustment, and no one is permanently successful on this. Like, it might look like that from the outside, but when you get inside the experience of someone who on the outside looks successful, you'll see how many failures, how many rejections, how many times they get told no. I go to a lot of Q&As for movies and stuff, and like, amount of times that you hear people talking about, especially like little independent movies where the story isn't going to be a blockbuster, it isn't going to be in every theatre across the world, the amount of times you hear stories about how difficult it is for them to get financing, to get the thing greenlit. There's a new film coming out called Green Book that stars Mahershala Ali and Viggo Mortensen, who you would think would be enough to get a film greenlit. I mean, they're. And Peter Farrelly, who directed it, said you would think with those two that it would just be a no-brainer, and still they're having to hustle and convince people that this film is a goer. So what's my point? So it is a constant navigation through and very much an intrinsic part of the whole process of being a creative, a professional creative. I mean, if you want to do it on an amateur level, then probably you can protect yourself against failure. But then, is that what we're all doing here? I don't think it is. PC Lock says, I've been down, but on the up every day is a blessing now, not a curse. But on the up every day is a blessing. Right. Okay. I mean, sometimes you do have to take it down to like fundamentals like that. Like, I'm alive. I've got my health or whatever it is. And that's the success for that day. I'm succeeding. Tom says, I'm succeeding in my failure on Insta Live. Yes! And Paul says, I think one of the reasons I voted for this topic was because I think it's important to reframe failure as a creative. We perceive rejection as failure, but it's not always the case. I don't know if you were around for the very first one I think we did on this was rejection. The very first creativity chat was about rejection, because I felt like exactly that it was an important thing that needed to be reframed for specifically for creatives, and see it as the gift that it is, and part of the process, rather than this obstacle that we have to overcome. Yes, it is an obstacle, but it is also many other important things. And failure is also, or whatever we consider to be failure, is also a very important part of that. Very important part of our world as creatives. Tom says, every top director has a passion project that took them decades to get off the ground. Exactly. I think that's Martin Scorsese, even the Silence film that he brought out, I think it was a couple of years ago. I think that was his. That was like 20 years in the making. So if we think for some reason that once you get to a level, then everything just flows, then we are sorely mistaken. Mr. Sander once says, you fail at 100% of the shots you don't take. Michael Jordan, classic quote. Carl's 6. I'm not even having to do anything here. You guys are all over it. How many times did George Lucas have to shop Star Wars to get it accepted? Well, Carl, I think you might know the answer to that, because I don't. Mr. Doddy, but I'm guessing it was a lot. Also, one thing I do know, there's a great Star Wars documentary that I watched. I think the mythology around Star Wars to me is much more interesting, I'm going to say, than the actual films. I'm not massively into the films. But I remember that he was in this kind of clique with some really who are now like massive directors like Steven Spielberg and stuff like that, and they had had a screening of early screening of Star Wars, and they were like, this is awful, this is really bad. And Steven Spielberg apparently gave him some guidance as to, how he should take the narrative of the film. And so again, another example of how you think, we look at Star Wars and we go, that is, the pinnacle of, space adventure films, or even all films. It's one of the greatest films of all time, most loved films of all time. And even that nearly stumbled and failed. And he took the course correction that Steven Spielberg's contribution was to him, and he was able to turn it into what it is today. Okay, sorry, I'm just going through the comments, make sure I don't miss anybody. Mr. Dotty 83 says, 5 years ago I started training to be a psychotherapist and was so adamant it was what I wanted to do until it triggered my own issues, and after taking a break realized, no, this isn't for me. I mean, I'm going to come to this, but I mean, the success of that was that you discovered that it wasn't for you, and probably that there were some things that you needed to take care of in terms of your own mental health journey. Win. But, okay, I was going to say this later, but anyways, I'll say it now, is that sometimes the reason that something can occur as a failure is because of our own definition of what the success should have been. Now, in your case, Mr. Doddy, your definition of success was, I will become a psychotherapist. The universe has other ideas for you, and therefore it gave you that experience to be able to come out the other side with a more healthy relationship with your mental health. So that was the win. That's the universe is just like, yay, I did it. And you're like, shit, I'm not a psychotherapist. PC Lock says, I like listening to you. Oh, right. Okay. You're a nice sort of thanks. Okay. And Carly says, this is hard to do, but very powerful and achieved. But the trick is not to take failure or success too personally. I mean, right. Also in If, oh gosh, guys, you've got to read If. It's such a great, no, I'm not going to look it up now. But it says to meet those two imposters just the same. I think it's talking about criticism and praise or something like that. But exactly, that they're not personal to you. Remember this conversation that we were having previously about how ideas are channeled through us and we're the conduit through which they're expressed. Well, how can you take it personally if that thing fails or succeeds when it came through you, not of you? You know, it's a little bit, obviously that's an ego way of seeing it. It's just like, I did this, the success is all mine. Even just on a pragmatic level, most of the time when people succeed, other people are involved. You know, if I were to succeed, I know exactly who I would need to thank for that. You know, I had this delusion when I was in my 20s that I was a self-made person because of certain things in my past made me feel like I was on my own. You know, it was a delusion, and I know that now. So even just on that practical level, you know, successes and failures are not even our own anyways, really. We can't attach ourselves to them as personally as we would like to. And that's all the work of the ego, just going, oh no, I failed, or yes, I'm successful, I'm the best person ever, is all ego. So Amber says, fall down 7 times, get up 8, Denzel Washington. Another great quote. You guys are coming with the quotes today. Mr. Doddy says, then I decided to look for a stand-up open mic a few weeks ago. Oh my gosh. And now within 6 weeks, it has become a passion of mine. Long way from a career yet, but it motivates me. Yeah, stand-up can do that. It's a bit like a drug. Anyways, Steve has joined, hi, and Pulp Documentary, hey, and Carly says, also perspective, my art 6 years ago wasn't as powerful as it is today. When I look back, it makes sense that I was rejected by some galleries. Frankly, I'm surprised I did as well as I did back then. I mean, this is perfect because, I mean, you know, this came up in the rejection conversation, but rejection is so important because, you know, I said this in the rejection conversation, but I'll say it again. You know, there was a point where people were, you know, and you'll probably get this appear on your Facebook at some point, of rejection letters that are sent to like really big bands or really famous people or whatever. And there was one for you too. And people were saying, and it was like 1976 or something like that. It was really early doors when they were just starting out. And people going, I bet that record executive like feels stupid. And whenever I see that, I'm always like, well, probably they don't, because that could have been shit. You know, that music that they were making could have been awful, and they were perfectly justified in rejecting them. You know, maybe it wasn't Sunday Bloody Sunday. Maybe they were just doing some awful Beatles covers, and who knows what you two were sending them. You know, but you know, that would have pushed them back to the drawing board, made them reevaluate, made them get out and do more gigs, made them refine their sound. You know, so who's to say that rejection wasn't the catalyst, not the barrier to them becoming who they are, right? And so we can look at the things that get in our way in the same way. Take a moment to lick your wounds, sure, but like, thank the universe. Thank you. Okay. What is there for me to get from this now? Tom says, are we in your acceptance speech? Yeah, sure. I will thank you all, I'm sure. All right. Okay, so just checking the time. All right, so the next thing I was going to talk about, but we kind of jumped about all over the place. Let me lay these notes out. Here's another failure. Look at these headshots. They look nothing. This is what I'm using as my scrap paper now because they look nothing like me. Talk about overcook. I asked the guy to, anyways. I haven't been able to use them because they don't look like me. Anyway, so things that can be defined, hi Nick, things that can be defined as a failure that I think are in the common parlance, things like business failure, failed business, failed marriage. And the only thing I wanted to say about that is that sometimes we think that things, because we've put effort into it and because we've committed to it, should last forever. Sometimes they have a fixed amount, they have a finite life. They have a finite life. And it was only us that didn't know it. You know, a very superficial example. Think about Ariana Grande and this Pete Davidson guy, you know, their marriage or engagement. Nobody thought that would last. It seemed to be only them that were under the illusion that it would be a permanent, like, long-term thing, sort of thing. And that's a very superficial example, but it's like, you know, it doesn't say anywhere that your business venture or your marriage or your relationship is gonna last forever, even though you commit to it and you intend it. These things, sometimes they have a life cycle that is nothing to do with you. And so to define it as a failure is to do a disservice to where it succeeded. You know, when I look back at the relationships that I've had that have failed, I have learned so much from them. The success of them was what I learned, you know, and I don't think of them as failed. I think of them as just ran their course. Who wants to say in something that isn't working as well? It's the same as with the business. You know, people refer to a business failure. Well, there was a point when it was successful because it was alive. It was a business, and then it ceased to be a business, and that's when it ended. And that's what you call the failure. You know. So I just want to say that you know, just to reframe this is outside of like talking about creativity, but to reframe maybe more personal stuff like relationships and stuff like that. It's just like they run their course. You know, there's a Christian term, you know, about people coming into your life for a reason or for a season or something like that. And it's pleasing to the ear because it rhymes, but it's also true. You know, sometimes we think of friendships as, they're going to last forever, but people change. You know, if you're running a business, you know, customers change, customer needs change. The people that are coming to listen to this live chat now are not all the same people that were listening at the beginning. Things change, and there could come a point where it's just like no one's turning up, and therefore this process has run its course. I'm not going to call it a failure because of all the times that people have tuned in and the good things that people have said that they've gotten from it, the good things that I've got from it. Tom says, learning is a success. Learning is a success. I'm coming to that too. You guys are so ahead of me, but I am coming to that too. All right. So, yes. So this is what I was saying earlier, is the purpose of the endeavor, whatever it was that you were trying to do, might not be the reason why you went into it. It might be your reasoning, but it might not be the reason that you got into it. So an example, I've used this example before, but like about, it's quite a while ago actually, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was asked to, by the producers of Mock the Week to be involved in this improv show. They were going to do an improv show. And I'd been doing well on Mock the Week, so they were like, come and do the show. They didn't even audition me for it. They were like, do you like improv? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, never done it. Would you be up for, this improv show? I think they just wanted a bit of colour on the show. And I was like, yeah, of course. I had no real, when you're so naive about something that you don't know enough about something to be able to do it. Anyways, so we had a week of rehearsal before the show was gonna go out, and I was terrible at it, but also I was hating it. I wasn't even like, I really want to get good at this. I just was hating it. It was excruciating, to the point where I had laser eye surgery booked on the Thursday. So we still had another day of rehearsal. I had laser eye surgery booked on a Thursday, and I I couldn't wait to leave the rehearsal to go and do that. I would rather have my eyes cut open, basically, than carry on with this rehearsal. And then on the Friday, I think it was, the producer called me and he was so sweet. He was just like, it seems like you're not enjoying it. It seems like this isn't really your wheelhouse. I hate to say this, but do you think it would be, and he found the right words to say, do you think it would be better if we parted company? They paid me to do the thing, you know, so it was, I could have put that down as a failure, but there are so many things that I got from that experience. First of all, the grace with which this guy fired me, basically. That was a life lesson in terms of how to treat people. I learned what my strengths and weaknesses are. I say, you know, the thing that I said about, even though I wasn't doing well, but I could have wanted to learn. I could have said, all right, I'm going to do what I can to just learn. I'm going to, go to improv classes in the evening or whatever so that I can, feed that into what we're doing. No, it wasn't my thing. And it took that experience to make me realize, don't go down that road because improv is not your thing. I even did a clowning course once and I hated that as well. And I realized that whole wheelhouse is just not for me. It showed me what it feels like when you're in the wrong job as well. Like if something isn't right, there's just this disquiet in you that will not be silenced, that, you have to do something about. And luckily the process just like ejected me from it. Phew. It freed me up to do something else, in terms of my time, because it would have been a longer commitment and they were going to series. So I could have been caught up in something that I would have absolutely hated. And it made me realize to move towards things that give me pleasure and not things that cause me pain. So all those gifts, all those lessons, that come from what can look like a failure. Hey, Sophie. Hi. So there's gifts of all those things that you can learn, all those lessons, all those skills that you can acquire from things going wrong. There was one time where I decided, because I wasn't getting any work, I was going to start a tour guide company. It was 2009. I wasn't getting any work, any acting work. I was doing stand-up, but I wasn't getting any acting work, no stand-up, TV work. So I was like, I'm going to start my own business. Nothing really happened with it because ultimately my heart wasn't in it. I was just looking for something to do outside of, just to keep me occupied. And, you could argue that the win of that was that I was kept occupied in that process of waiting, because by the end of that year, I got my first mock of the week. So I'm not saying that caused that, but it took my attention sufficiently that I got to that point. I even made it that far. I wasn't suicidal or anything, but it was just treading water. It kept me occupied. There weren't a huge amount of wins from this, but you take what you can. That's what I'm saying. Right. So, hang on, these have gotten out of order. And here's the other headshot that also does not look like me. I mean, Jesus, it's not even the same color. So, even though we've talked about failure and how that doesn't really exist, but there also, there's bad choices, there's mistakes you can make, but there's also this thing called failing. And that's a different wheelhouse. That, I will say, does exist. Something can be failing. Something can be, we sort of touched on this earlier, something can be working and then it suddenly stops working. But that is an invitation from the universe to course correct. That could be that you're just on a path that is going to take you down a dead end, and it doesn't mean that there wasn't value by going down that path, but it just means that you need to, it's an invitation to reassess and look at what actually needs to be done to make those changes to get you to where you would like to be going to. So failing, if you're going to put it on a spectrum, is like one end of the success failure spectrum, but it's a constant balance. It's an active process where if you accept the invitation from the universe, you are constantly making adjustments, because like I said earlier, there's no sure path to success. It's not like once you've got this formula, you're away, you are going to be constantly having to go, okay, that's not working anymore. Like, for example, in my own career, there was a point a couple of years ago, before I started having this coaching, where I was just trying to do everything. I had so many plates spinning. And I had to go through the process of reevaluating with the coach to say, listen, pick something that you can, you can go as far as you can with, put your energies into that. And it's not to say, because I put this post on, the Idris thing where he was saying about people saying stick to your lanes. It wasn't that type of conversation. It was because he's succeeding in all the things he's trying. It was like, I'm not succeeding. I'm not where I want to be. So therefore, what could work to change that? That's when we had this conversation about, let all these other things go. You don't need them. You don't need to be a YouTuber. You don't, well, I am, because I put these things on YouTube, but do you know what I mean? You don't have to put your energies into being that. And then you don't have to do podcasts and blogs and da-da-da-da-da. If you're going to write your screenplays, get them made, because that's what sets you on fire. That's what's important to you. So failing is an invitation. There's probably a better word for it as well, but I embrace failing. I don't mind that. Failing is like falling. It's like, how Buzz Lightyear describes flying, falling with style, or whatever he says. So failing is sort of succeeding, but in a downward direction. So it's an invitation to course correct, basically, and failing is something you can embrace, because it's like I say, it's like falling with style, because you can turn it upwards. You can correct from there, and you can get back onto a plateau of success. You're not going to stay there. Who said earlier that neither success nor failure are permanent? They're constant moving plates. If you're putting yourself out there, they're going to be constantly moving, constantly changing. So ultimately then, in which case, failure is really a matter of intent. Hang on, sorry, let me just go back. George says, good to see me recycling. It's very pleasing to use these as recycling, as scrap paper, I've got to tell you, because I was so pissed off when I got them back, but there you go, you live and learn. Mr. Dolly says, in fact, creativity in itself is so complex that there is a natural trial and error component. You will find your niche eventually. And even then, times change, things change, you change, the creative world changes. So whatever was your niche, suddenly, it doesn't fit anymore. I don't fit, or whatever. So it's like this constant, ongoing thing. I think ultimately the joy and the success, the real success of being a creative is to live in the constant flow of change. And it's change that you create, in the sense of you're constantly reevaluating, not in a strategic way, but just it's that recreating every day. What is it gonna be today? What's gonna be so today? What do I say is so today? In terms of my creativity, do you know what I mean? What's working? What do I need to change? Where am I winning? Just constantly being in that, and not feeling, and let it emerge. That's something that I thought this morning. I sort of had this weird sort of situation this morning where I was sort of awake and asleep, and I wasn't really, the dreams that I was having felt like awake time. I don't know if there's a word for that, but they felt like I was awake. And I thought, in one of the dreams, I said, I want to introduce this word emergent, which is to do with, rather than going to a particular point, rather than trying to get over to there, I want to get to finishing my book or whatever, that your creative process emerges from you. So you're really present to what's so in this moment. Really, what's so? Is it still the book? Okay, it is still the book. Okay, I'll carry on writing. And that's scary, because that's real front of the train stuff. That's really sort of, rather than living off of thoughts of the past, or, project, rather than thinking of your life in relation to the past, you're really just letting what's really so in the present moment be the most important thing. And that's, that takes a degree of faith. ultimately you will be fine. There's no way that the who you are, if you're present, if you're completely present, there's no way that that will steer you wrong. But it's a huge leap of faith to trust in that sort of more emergent experience of life, rather than just going, being all goals, 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 goals. Let's see what that threw up. Jared and Ryan, hi. Steve says, I read about emergent theology recently. It's good stuff. Trust. Allowing who... I don't know why I'm reading it in that voice. That's not your voice. It's good stuff. Trust. Allowing who you are to emerge and not be defined by others. Good stuff. I didn't know there was an emergent theology. My goodness. Don't recommend a book. I've got enough to read already. Lee Walker has joined. Hi, Lee. All right. So your intent is basically your failure. Definition of failure is based on your intent. And so say for example, Tom was we were joking about Oscar speeches. But say for example, I did have an intent. I set an intent that my success will be defined by me winning an Oscar in 2019. I am pretty much 100% setting myself up for failure, because I'm not in a film that's going to be released and be eligible for an Oscar, let alone have the opportunity to win ones, right? So I'm setting myself up for failure. However, if my intent or my measure of success is I want to be a happy working actor, ding, that sets me up to win. So actually, the more narrow your definition of your own failure and success, the more likely you are to be in the space of failure, not failing, but failure. As soon as you broaden things, you just give yourself so much latitude, and those narrow definitions are probably of the ego as well. And again, it's not demonizing the ego. It is just saying that that's usually where those things come from. I must win an Oscar. I must, my photographs must be in this gallery. My music must be heard here. As soon as you start to put those things on, and it's not to say that those things are wrong, but it's like you're choosing to take yourself closer to the experience of failure by putting those narrow windows on your own work. Or life even. So therefore, ultimately, failure is a choice. That's what it basically comes down to and I think that's why I started this by saying I don't feel like I failed at anything, because I've chosen not to. I've chosen not to see it that way, So if it really is a choice, then there's so many other options available to you other than, the self-flagellation or the, sadness or whatever that comes with thinking of something as failure. Steve says in the context of mental disability. Oh, okay, gotcha. And Andy says, and why not? And Steve says the book is Down Syndrome and Theology. Oh, got it. So, for example, you can choose to have a very broad measure of failure and success, or you can choose to have a very narrow one. If you want to, you can have a broad, broad spectrum for some parts of your life and narrow for others, whatever works for you. It's not a right and a wrong, but I'm just saying that you have the choice. You can choose to learn from your failures, or you can choose to just do the same shit again and again and again. You can choose to take those lessons. They're available to you if you want them. And sometimes the lessons don't come straight away. How many times have you thought about something you did 10, 20 years ago, whatever, and you're like, damn, it's only it's only in this moment that you realize what the failing was then. These things have riches that will, feed and support you and propel you forward through your whole life. There's a saying as well that says that you'll learn more from your failures than you will from your successes. Did somebody already post that? Somebody, because there was loads of quotes going on earlier and really good quotes. Also, you can choose to focus on what you've gained from your failures rather than what you've lost from them. That's another choice that one can make. Tom says, oh wait, hang on a minute. Mr. Dolly says, incidentally, as you seem to be on first name terms with people here. Oh, Donal. Donal? Is it Donal or Donal? Donal, I'm going to say, because I think that's how you pronounce it, right? And Tom says, you can visualize a goal like winning an Oscar, but the real goal is taking the next, if 1,000 steps to make your dream a reality. Yeah, and actually, if you're fine with, you know, using this Oscar thing as an example, if you're fine with choosing that as your goal and then letting it go, then there's joy in taking those 1,000 steps, you know. So it's a funny old balance of intending awesome stuff for the future, but really the gift is the journey. And the 1,000 steps to the, or 10,000, however many you said, is that's actually the success, is taking those steps, you know, in terms of a richness of life. Those are the things that, sorry, I'm just thinking this through, because like, I don't know why, but I just feel like when you said that the 1,000 steps felt so special, more special than the Oscar. The Oscar was kind of like the cherry, but the 1,000 steps was really the deliciousness. But it never doesn't necessarily feel like that when you're taking them. Maybe because that's a choice that we make. That, oh, this is just to get me to the Oscar. When actually, there's riches in those 1,000 steps that maybe we forget to enjoy. You know, the mundane is so much more important than I think we give it credit for. There's so much richness in it that we kind of overlook. So yeah, I don't know what I'm getting at, but I liked that you said that. SJ Warner, hi. Donal, excellent, spot on, good. And Donal says, the first non-Irish based English person who ever got it right. Well, I've had some training with my Irish name pronunciations. Tom says, yes. The 1,000 steps of the journey is where the riches lie. And SJ Warner says, we all learn and take what we need from the journeys. I mean, the journeys are the thing. The journeys are the Oscars. Right? I think that's what the truth of it is, that we would hate to accept, is that the journey is the Oscars, not the Oscar. Isn't that weird? God, after all that, shit. We've already won. Fuck, now what? I mean, that's it, isn't it? That's really what it is. Didn't expect that to be where we got to. Other choices. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so just a couple of other things. Oh, hang on. So George says, yeah, the journey, miss what shapes us, not the destination is what shapes us. Yes! But it's also the gift. The journey is the gift. The journey is Okay, so the journey is the thing that, you know, our deeper self is striving for, but they have to give us the destination to make us take the journey. That's my job. Thanks, guys. That's where we got to. End of conversation. The rest doesn't matter. Okay, so SJ says, agree, all about them journey, Steve says, love the idea of the journey. It replaces so much unhealthy narrative. It's also the basis of my 3-month project. Oh, more later. Goody. All right, and yeah. Donal says, and the journey goes to, I can't open the envelope. All right, listen, we're going to leave it there because I don't think I can add anything else to that. So, yay you guys. I mean I think that's ultimately it. That is for me, that is a massive place to get to, just in terms of my own thinking, because I get so caught up with trying to get to a particular place. You know, I'm just getting a pen to write down your business. I get so caught up with, with destination that I'm forgetting that not only is the journey part of the process, the journey is the gift of the process. The destination is just the carrot on the end to make me take the journey. So after that point in the conversation, basically the rest of it was about people declaring their journeys and me just like teasing them out to make sure that they were as specific as they could be. So I didn't include that in the video. But if you want to participate, this was recorded on the 2nd of December. If you want to participate, we're not starting until the 30th of December, 2018, in case you're watching this from the future. So if you want to, get involved, you've seen the run up, maybe you've watched other videos that have like talked about how this is all going to work, then, feel free to comment below. What commitment would you want to make in terms of a goal? Is it a goal of doing? Is it a goal of being? Is it a bit of both? And just join us on Instagram. We have these conversations every Sunday. The next one's going to be on the 30th of December 2018. So join us then if you want to have like a supportive bunch of people, just be rooting for you to achieve your goal. Have a look on my Instagram. There's a highlight called Creative Toolkit, and that will give you an idea of how to formulate your goal for this 3-month project, but basically have it be something that's measurable, that's finite, that you can say, oh, I have achieved it or I have not achieved it, and something that will push you and just really take you outside of your comfort zone, but that can still be achievable without compromising, your life. You don't want it to be something that's such a huge undertaking that things get compromised. So just, if you want to join us on that journey, then give it a go. As you heard earlier, mine is meditation, which is really going to push me. See what comes up for you. Anyway, I just thought I'd add this little addendum onto the end of the conversation rather than just have you watch me just write down people's goals. If you join us for the conversation, you'll find out what people's goals were anyway. All right, thanks guys, bye.